Good evening. I'm the Maven of the Eventide, and welcome back to my vampire library. A library both about vampires and for vampires. If you advertise, they will come. I have received some new vampire books and things that people have sent to my P.O. box. Thank you to everyone who sends me all these wonderful vampire things. Let's see what we've got. Again, I arranged them in order of size because it makes for easy stacking. And now that I have 4 vampire bookshelves in my vampire library, I got plenty of room to fit these books on the shelves. I just may need to rearrange the categories. First up, Fall of Night by Rachel Kane in the Morganville Vampire series, which I've heard mentioned before, but I didn't really know anything about. And then, just recently, I was doing an interview with Juliet Landau of Buffy the Vampire series fame. She played Dracula on Buffy, and I interviewed her on my channel, and if you haven't watched it, you should go watch that video. And after the interview, we kept talking for like another hour, and we were talking about our favorite vampire books, and she told me this was her favorite vampire series for YA. And I had never read it, and then just by coincidence, someone told me that they were sending it to my P.O. box. So now I have it. Now I can read it. It's not the first one, but it's like the third to last, according to my internet search. I haven't read any of the Morganville vampire books yet, so I don't know if I can read this one without having read all the rest. Or if I should just read this one first. Thanks to its unique combination of human and vampire residents, Morganville, Texas is a small college town with big-time problems. When student Claire Danvers gets the chance to experience life on the outside, she takes it. But Morganville isn't the only town with vampire trouble. Claire thought she'd never get to leave Morganville, but she can't pass up the chance to finally attend her dream school, MIT. After all, getting to invent anti-vamp devices with Professor Anderson, a Morganville exile herself, sounds like a dream come true. Until Claire realizes there are sinister forces at play, and she's not the only one with a vampire-related agenda. Without her friends Shane, Eve, and Michael, Claire finds that surviving a killer schedule may be hard, but with them, it might turn out to be impossible. Well, that kind of makes me want to read the earlier books before I read this one. Why did I get this one first? Is there something I should know? Dark Road Rising by P.N. Elrod. It's another Vampire Files novel. And I have the collected set of the first 6, but I don't have this one. This is a never-before-published novel of the Vampire Files, which could be interesting or could not bode well, because why was it never published? Vampire P.I. Jack Fleming's wounded partner is on the critical list. His starstruck girlfriend is tempted by the siren song of Hollywood, and he's got his hands full running the Nightcrawler Club. The last thing he needs is to play babysitter to Gabriel Witty Croon, a dangerously unstable monster and newly created vampire with deadly secrets to hide. According to Rachel Kane, author of the Morganville Vampire series, this is the best installment of the Jack Fleming saga. So, thank you, Rachel. That's good to know. Vampire the Mist by Christy Golden. This is another Ravenloft book. And as we discussed before, when we discussed P.N. Elrod's I Strahd, Ravenloft, the book series are all about a different, like, Lord of Darkness in Ravenloft, and not all of them are vampires. But this one is. So this is another vampire book in that series. So now I can read that too. It's by a different author. I didn't love I Strahd by P.N. Elrod, even though I like her as an author. I didn't think she did a great job with that book, so I'm curious to see how good this book is about this other vampire. Be careful what you wish for. The dark powers of Ravenloft might hear you. Jander Sunstar is a gold elf, a native of magical Evermeet in the Forgotten Realms. He is also a 500-year-old vampire. Oh, an elf vampire. Torn by rage and grief, Yander is transported into the nightmare realm of Ravenloft, where he gains the attention of the Demiplane's master, Count Strahd von Zarovich. Oh, Strahd is in this book. But can Yander trust this elegant fellow vampire once he discovers that his own quest for revenge is linked to the dark heritage of the Count's domain? Oh, cool. I like crossover characters. The Nymphos of Rocky Flats by Mario Acevedo. And last time I made one of these book videos, I talked about another book of Mario Acevedo's I got that was 5th in a series. And I had asked why the person who sent it to me, And they told me that it was by accident. They meant to send me something else. And that book, I think, was supposed to be on a different order for their own selves. But because I couldn't read the 5th book in that series without having read the other parts in the series, I now have the 1st book. When Girls Go Wild, Call in the Undead. Deliciously unique, a smooth combination of Anne Rice and Michael Connelly with a generous portion of Dave Barry, loaded with thrills, sex, violence, and laughs. Felix Gomez went to Iraq a soldier, he came back a vampire. Back home in the States, the reluctantly undead former infantryman pays penance for his wartime sins, making a living as a private detective able to unravel mysteries that baffle his mortal counterparts. Now, an old friend has asked him to investigate a bizarre outbreak of nymphomania at the secret government facilities in Rocky Flats, Colorado. Normally, Felix's unorthodox and downright supernatural methods of extracting information are foolproof, but this time his efforts inadvertently stoke the lustful fires smoldering within the bodacious babes he's interrogating, while eliciting cryptic mentions of Roswell and a top-secret Project Redlight. P.I. Felix Gomez has finally landed a case he can really sink his teeth into, but when shadowy government agents and determined Eastern European vampire hunters get stirred in, this deadly goulash of tight-lipped and rampant libidos boils over. So like I said last time, it's nice to have some vampire books by people of color once in a while. Thank you. Wayward Sun by Rainbow Rowell. I've already talked about this to you on these videos before because last time I had a copy from the library that I just happened to have when I was making a video, but I didn't own it. And I said I really wished I did because I have the first book in this series, Carry On, but I didn't actually own the sequel, and now I do, so my set is complete. Have you heard that there is a 3rd book coming out in this series? I'm so excited. This series is about magicians who are not wizards, they're magicians, and they go to a private magician boarding school. It's like an homage to Harry Potter, but one of them happens to be a vampire. And it's also a very gay love story. Read the first book, Carry On first, and then read Wayward Sun. This is Perishables by Michael G. Williams, which I talked to you about again the last time I made one of these videos. We were talking about books that feature fat vampires, and the ones I was talking about sounded really kind of disturbing. I haven't read any of them yet, so I can't tell you how problematic or insulting they might actually be, but I mentioned that I had read a book about a fat vampire that was great, and this was it, but I had only read it in ebook. So someone bought me a hard copy, so now I can put it on my shelves. Thank you. I have met Michael G. Williams in person. He is a local author to where I live, and I've seen him at conventions, and he is a really cool guy. He is also gay, and the vampire in this book, besides being fat, is also gay, even though there isn't any romance in these stories. It just happens to be part of his character. As you can see, there's a zombie. So it's a vampire, a fat gay vampire fighting zombies. This book is Stephen Colbert meets Stephen King. Everyone hates their homeowners association and nobody likes a zombie apocalypse. Put the two together and Withrow Surratt is having a truly catastrophic night. Not to mention the fact that he's got one big secret to keep from the idiots in his home. Withrow is a vampire. Perishables has been called by some a gripping examination into suburban ennui set in a milieu of postmodern apocalyptic horror. Not really. Those people would be navel-gazing idiots. Perishables is a bust-your-gut funny collection of 3 stories about trust, human and undead relationships, what community really means, and zombies. A lot of freaking zombies. Fans of the Black Knight Chronicles, Tome of the Bill, and Fred the Vampire Accountant will love this series. It is also a fall staff book, which is the same publisher as my publisher, Dead Brides, Vampire Tales, by Edgar Allan Poe. So this is a collection of some of Edgar Allan Poe's stories that feel sort of vampiric. Edgar Allan Poe didn't canonically write any vampires, but these are dead brides. So female characters who sort of feel like they come back from the dead, either literally or maybe psychologically. And here we have Bernice, Morella, Lygia, Fall of the House of Usher, Oval Portrait. And there's a good foreword by James Havoc. Another cool essay in here for the preface by Jeremy Reed. I'm actually more interested in reading those than rereading the Poe stories. I'd love to see how they consider these Poe characters vampires. Because, sure. Edgar Allan Poe was hugely influential to a lot of writers of vampire fiction back in the day. Dead Brides contains the vampire cycle of 5 stories written between 1835 and 1842, which in many ways form the nucleus of Poe's prose work. In these classic tales, Poe investigates the vampiric nature of human relationships, including love and lust, both normal and incestuous, and develops his theme to observe the vampiric qualities inherent in the creative or artistic process. Vampirism, with its terrible energy exchanges and lesions, is ultimately Poe's analogy for a love that persists beyond the grave, an all-consuming passion that knows no peace until an undead reconciliation is effected. I love stuff like this. London After Midnight, a new reconstruction based on contemporary sources with a transcript of a newly discovered magazine fictionalization of the lost film. So for those of you who don't know, Lon Chaney, famous for playing the Phantom of the Opera, my favorite monster, also was in a movie called London After Midnight where he played this character, which has always been thought vampiric, but it was a lost film and we only know very little about it. London After Midnight, the 1927 MGM film starring Lon Chaney, has often been regarded as the holy grail of all lost motion pictures. Numerous contemporary records of the film, however, do survive. These include a script, a photoplay edition novelization of the script, a press book, a cutting continuity, many still photos, copyright registrations, and various reviews. A persistent problem bedeviling previous attempts to understand and reconstruct the film is that these sources are contradictory among themselves regarding crucial plot elements, and some are also internally incoherent. The rediscovery of a long-lost short story version of London After Midnight, written in 1928 for Boys magazine in England, now provides a master key for solving the problems that have confused previous accounts and reconstructions of the film. In a detailed comparison of all the surviving sources with this newly discovered version, Thomas Mann has finally brought order into the chaos of the gaps, anomalies, and inconsistencies. The plot elements that were left on the MGM cutting room floor but restored in the British story version go far to providing us with our best understanding of London After Midnight, regarding both what was in the lost film and, equally important, what was not in it. That is fascinating. Thank you for sending this to me. All new, never before published horror writers on Horror Film Cut, starring Anne Rice, Clive Barker, Ramsey Campbell, Skip Inspector, and many others, film photos included. So this is a collection edited by Christopher Golden, of writers, these types of writers, writing essays about horror movies. So I'm mostly interested in what Anne Rice has to say, featuring the 13 most disturbing films of all time, the erotic shockers of David Lynch, the sexual politics of Fatal Attraction, the exploding families of David Cronenberg, the monstrous creations of Wes Craven, Todd Browning's Freaks, the ultimate cinematic sideshow. So many good things in here. Interested to read other authors' interpretations of famous horror films and usually how those films influence their own writing. Always want to know about that. Oh, this! I bought this for myself. This is a journal. It's just like a blank paper journal. But the cover is Dracula. They had all different sort of literary classics covers. Dracula. But it's not just sort of, it has Bram Stoker's signature here. But this isn't just a page from Dracula. It is Bram Stoker's handwritten, like a photocopy of his handwriting, but it's embellished so you can sort of feel the texture. But not of his Dracula manuscript. It's the play version. The Dracula is being adapted into a play, and it's the first page of that play. And you can read, it starts with Jonathan Harker's dialogue on the first page of that play, and then all the scene notes. It's so cool. And I love all the gold on it and the blood splashes. I had to have this. I'm one of those people who buys journals and then just never uses them because they're so pretty and I can't destroy them. I mean, I'll use it someday, obviously, I'll use my journals someday. Oh, here we go. Vampires, with a Y. Lord Byron to Count Dracula by Christopher Frayling. The updated, modernized version of that book that I mentioned to you last time. Where is it? Vampire the Bedside Companion. So Christopher Frayling wrote The Vampire the Bedside Companion in the 70s, and then in the 90s he updated it, and this is that updated version. It's just a bunch of essays about themes and stuff in Dracula and all the other pre-Dracula vampires. It's a lot of talk about racism that's kind of racist itself, so take this book with a grain of salt, but this is one of those essential Dracula scholar books that has influenced a lot of Dracula scholarship that's come since, so I have to read it. The first 4 volumes of the manga Millennium Snow by Bisco Hattori. The person who sent this to me said it was a manga that they really liked, that they thought I would like. 17-year-old Chiyuki Matsuoka was born with heart problems, and her doctors say she won't live to see the next snow. Toya is an 18-year-old vampire who hates blood and refuses to make the traditional partnership with a human whose life-giving blood would keep them both alive for thousands of years. In order to save Chiyuki's life, Toya finally bonds with Chiyuki. But what she doesn't know is that Toya has refused to make the full partnership with her. He doesn't want to doom her to 1,000 years of life. Chiyuki swore to Toya that she would never leave him alone, but is that a promise she'll be able to keep? This looks fun and sexy. Thank you for sending it to me. Dracula, the vampire play. This is the play that Hamilton Dean and John L. Balderston wrote based on Dracula, the original Dracula. This was the officially sanctioned play that the Dracula estate gave permission to. Well, the person who sent it to me signed it for me. Thank you. It says, for Elisa, my favorite vampire on YouTube. So yeah, it's just a script version of the play. This is the play that mostly inspired the 1930s Bela Lugosi movie. Also the 1979 movie. A lot of Dracula was inspired by this. It changes a lot from the original Dracula. Like, it combines characters, it switches Lucy and Mia around, it does a lot of weird stuff. Very important for the evolution of Dracula adaptations. And I've never actually read this play before, so thank you. The Hunger by Whitley Strieber, the movie The Hunger is based off the movie, which we have discussed before on Vampire Reviews. I actually have the sequels to this book, but I didn't own the original book, so now my collection is complete. Those Who Hunt the Night by Barbara Hembley. Stalker by Daylight. Location, London. Time, the period of Sherlock Holmes. Subject, vampires. The vampires had been living in London since the time of Elizabeth I, existing without suspicion, but now they were being ruthlessly murdered by someone or something that ripped their coffins open for the light of day to burn them to ashes. The killer worked by day, but no vampire could endure the daylight to seek for and destroy the murderer. Against all their traditions, they had to turn to a mortal human for aid. Thus it was that Professor James Asher, one-time spy for His Majesty's government, returned from his class at Oxford to find his young wife in a strange coma, and Simon Isidro, oldest of the London vampires, waiting for him. Isidro was polite and urbane, but he left no doubt of his power to locate and place his spell on the young woman wherever she might flee. If Asher wanted to save her, he must find the destroyer of the vampires for them. Asher had no choice but to agree. But if he found the killer, what must happen then? What would inevitably be the fate of any mortal human who learned the identities and location of the vampires? The answer was all too obvious. Whether he succeeded or failed, it seemed that Professor James Asher was doomed. Interesting. Time of Sherlock Holmes, that's like gothic gas lamp perfection. That is definitely my cup of tea. Dr. Sleep by Stephen King. People consider this a vampire novel. This is the sequel to The Shining. And I have not read The Shining, but I've seen the movie and the miniseries, so I'm familiar. So in this, the little boy from The Shining has grown up and gets involved with energy vampires, basically. They're not vampires like in Stephen King's other vampire books, Salem's Lot, but they were vampiric, so it counts. And as in Stephen King fashion, it is huge. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. This book just came out pretty recently, and I've been seeing it everywhere, so I was really curious about it. People keep asking me about it. So when someone sent it to me, I decided that it would be our next read for my Vampire Book Club, which is hosted on my Discord, and you should join my Discord and hang out and talk about vampires with us, even if you don't want to join the book club. So we are reading this now. If you want to join the book club and join us, you have until December 13th to finish reading this book. And then I will do a live stream and talk about it here on this channel. You can come join me, ask me questions, talk to me in the chat. We'll have fun. Patricia Campbell's life had never felt smaller. Her husband is a workaholic. Her teenage kids have their own lives. Her senile mother-in-law needs constant care, and she's always a step behind on her endless to-do list. The only thing keeping her sane is her book club, a close-knit group of Charleston women united by their love of true crime. At these meetings, there's likely to talk about the Manson family as they are about their own families. One evening after book club, Patricia is viciously attacked by an elderly neighbor, bringing the neighbor's handsome nephew, James Harris, into her life. James is well-traveled and well-read, and he makes Patricia feel things she hasn't felt in years. But when children on the other side of town go missing, their deaths written off by local police, Patricia has reasons to believe James Harris is more of a Bundy than a Brad Pitt. The real problem? James is a monster of a different kind, and Patricia has already invited him in. Little by little, James will insinuate himself into Patricia's life and try to take everything she took for granted, including the book club. But she won't surrender without a fight in this blood-soaked tale of neighborly kindness gone wrong. Intrigued? I haven't started reading it yet for book club. I'm going to start very soon, so you can read it with me. Piercing the Darkness, Undercover with Vampires in America Today by Kathleen Ramsland. Kathleen Ramsland is also the author of this, which we talked about on one of my previous videos, which is The Vampire Companion, the official guide to Anne Rice's The Vampire Chronicles. It's like a wiki, fandom wiki for all her stuff. It includes a bunch of really cool Anne Rice information. Kathleen Ramsland. So what she did was she went undercover with the real-life, true vampire culture and wrote this expose. A daring writer's intimate and terrifying odyssey into a world of darkness. Whether someone wanted to drink blood or merely read about someone else drinking blood, whether someone wanted to exert a hypnotic influence over others or be the one to fall into the swoon, whether someone just wanted to be a vampire once a week and then put it aside or live the feeling of it with every breath, it mattered not to me. I was prepared to listen to the stories of vampires, donors, victims, experts, chroniclers, hunters, readers, writers, musicians, magicians, strippers, squatters, dominatrixes, role players, criminals, divas, entrepreneurs, fetishists, and any other person who manifested some aspect of what I call vampire culture. It's as diverse a group as any subculture gets. And anyone who thinks that it's nothing but what the television news flashes on the screen at Halloween or what the talk shows portray is missing the richness and complexity of the responses that vampire generated in recent years. That's how I got my start. And when I decided to immerse and find out more, I discovered a lot more about this culture than I ever expected. So if you're interested in the real-life vampire lifestyle, I've got a few books on that I haven't read much of yet, just sort of skim parts, but this is a full-on expose about it. The My Little Pony Friendship is Magic Vampire Comics, which someone actually sent to me a while ago, and I forgot to include them in my last video. I'm so sorry. I was so excited to get these. I put them in a different spot so I could read them faster, and then I forgot to include them, but definitely mentioning them now. People ask me about reviewing the Friendship is Magic vampire arcs all the time, so excited to read them. A graphic novel version of Nosferatu, the film, based on the classic silent film. Black and white art, very cool. I'm not sure if these are vampire related. They came in a box full of books that someone sent me, some of which were vampires and some weren't, but I'm sharing all of them. This is Jim Henson's The Storyteller comic version. This is the one about ghosts, and this is the one about fairies. Love all spooky supernatural creatures. Thank you very much. This is one of those cool magazines that comes out at Halloween time, so I just got it at the drugstore. It's The World's Scariest Places, Haunted, Creepy, and Abandoned. And the reason it counts because it talks about Dracula's castle, which is the castle well, there's two Dracula's castles. There's the one that they think Bram Stoker was inspired by, and then there's Vlad the Impaler's actual castle, so could be either of those. And then there's a whole bunch of other spooky gothic horror stuff in here. I haven't read it yet. It's one of those really glossy, beautiful magazines that you keep forever as a book because they cost $13. Why are magazines so expensive nowadays? Vampirology, the true history of the fallen ones. Here is the true history of the blood-drinking fallen ones, or vampires, who have lived amongst us and preyed on humans since the earliest days. I write this book as a warning to all humanity, especially those who might be ensnared by the vampire's wicked charms. Archibald Brooks, World Protector, 1900. This is one of those books that has all sorts of like cool inserts and things that you can sort of flip out, and I love books like this, even though it's sort of silly and for children. But if you sort of want to imagine vampires are real, and this is a lore book that explains how vampires work. According to what lore's rules, I guess just this book's own. It's not based on any particular franchise. It's just whatever this author thought was cool. Oh, dragons. There's dragons in here too? Yes. Love books like this. Some more books that don't have vampires, but were sent to me in the same combinations as people sending me the other books. So I'm going to share them anyway because they're spooky or gothic or my aesthetic in some way anyway. So this is volumes 1 through 3 of Black Butler, and I have watched at least like the first season of Black Butler, and I really enjoyed it, so I'm very excited to read the manga. Whoever sent this to me, you were right. I would like this. Black Butler isn't about a vampire, it's about a demon, but, it sort of has the same kind of ideas and very, like, demon-human interaction relationships, which I always love when a monster and a human have to team up for, reasons, and it sort of shakes them both, but they make it work. The series also has Grim Reapers in it, which I like. Uncle Silas by Sheridan Le Fanu, who is the author of Carmilla, the first prominent lady vampire book, and this is one of his other books. Sheridan Le Fanu was the father of the modern ghost story back when he was considered modern, so anything he writes is going to be spooky and awesome, and I'm looking forward to reading this. Poison Princess by Cresley Cole, and the person who sent this to me told me it didn't have vampires, but it does have death as a character, which I'm all about, so thank you. The premise of this is that each major arcana tarot card is personified, so of course the death card is personified, and as well as all the other ones. Thank you. And a few things. So recently I did a video with your friend and mine, Dacre Stoker, the descendant of Bram Stoker himself, for a Kickstarter that he was promoting where they recreate all of the historical documents that Bram Stoker used. And one of them was a map. And when they left, after they filmed that video, they gave me a copy of the map of my very own, which isn't even out yet for the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter was fully funded. They did a great job. You can still get it. Just follow that link to the video. You'll find it. This is a map of the region of Transylvania where Dracula's castle is. Actually authentic, and it's been made to look old, like it's an actual historical document in a very artistically done way. So I'm going to frame that and put it on my wall now that it's mine. I didn't know they were going to give me a map when we did the video. I thought I was just helping them promote their product and talking about some cool items. Then I got to keep it. Thank you. He also gave me this, which is a little vampire wind-up toy. He gave it to me for my fledgling spawn. So I guess I'll have to give it back to him. But I thought I'd share it with you. It's very cute. Person who sent me the whole box of books also sent me this blue mesh bag with a skeleton skateboard in it. It's so cute. Someone sent me these 3 little statuettes saying that they just wanted them to have a good home. They're like Halloween decorations from a Halloween store, and they're really cool. They're vampires. They have fangs. So we have like a mother, a father, and a creepy doll child. And the funny thing is my child, who is 19 months old, saw these sitting on the table, and she points at this one and goes, "Mama, Mama." It was just my heart. Yes, I am wearing my Lindsay Ellis is a Menace shirt, which if you don't get the reference, you're probably better off. But I was making a bunch of these shirts because I make shirts now because I'm a crafty person, and I was selling them. And a lot of people bought these shirts from me. So, of course, I had to make one for myself. And, it's got the wolf, the howling wolf with the Karen font. Not vampire related, wolf porn related. It's a whole story. Edgar Allan Poe Funko Pop, thank you for sending this to me. I don't have a lot of Funko Pops. I've got now Morticia Addams, Phantom of the Opera, an Elvira, and a mini Elvira. And those are the only Funko Pops I have. So now my Funko Pop collection is now actually to the level of being called a collection. I hate taking them out of the boxes, but I'm gonna, because he's got to go up with my other Funko Pops so they can all sit together. Thank you. Speaking of the things I made, I have still been crafting, and I am going to start an Etsy store. I just had to get a better camera so I could actually take pictures of my things to put in my Etsy store, but I just recently got a new camera, so I'm going to do that soon. And maybe by the time this video is up, I'll have a link for you. But if not, look out for it soon. Follow me on Twitter. You want to see what else I've made so far? So I made this Nosferatu shadow box. Nosferatu going up the stairs. You can see it's dimensional, like it has depth in the layers. Spider webs. And these guys, which I kind of made for myself, but also I will sell them because I can make as many of these as I want. These are gargoyles, again, dimensional. There's like 16 layers of paper to all the different bits and dimensions that are of them. And these are so much fun to make. They take forever to make, but they're very rewarding. I like crafting. It's a quarantine. We can't go outside. Not that I would in daylight. What are you going to do inside? Cut out a bunch of paper and make spooky gargoyles. Thank you to everyone who sent me vampire books from our vampire library. If you would like to send me books, P.O. Box address is in the description. Otherwise, leave me comments, please. Let me know what other vampire books I should add to my vampire book wish list. Yes, I have a vampire book wish list of all the vampire books that I don't have yet that people have recommended to me so I can keep track of them all, and I want to hear that. I have also added all of these books to my vampire library list. So if you were like trying to take notes and write down these recommendations while I was talking about them, just go to my list. It is in the description of this video. You can just click through it and find all the books that I have mentioned in this series. Thank you again. Thank you to my Patreon patrons for supporting my videos and making vampire reviews possible. If you have something you would like me to review or talk about or even just highlight on vampire reviews, join my Patreon and talk to me about it there, because that's where we do it. Soon, Etsy, where I will sell cut paper shadow boxes and silly meme t-shirts. Soon. Until next time, good night.